My mother's mother.
How old is she?
She must be 80, but she just got it about 2-3 weeks ago. My auntie's been here for a week and a half looking after her. Now she's getting a care. Full-time care. What? 99 Leicester Road. Next door, Annie Veneer. You know Annie? Yeah.
Do a lot of these old people live in Israel?
No, my mother's mother.
How old is she? Oh, you're on that YouTube thing.
Yeah, I cancelled it.
YouTube.
Well, Yehuda.
Can I have some?
Yeah, sure. Put it in it.
Dad, we're missing the sweets. Sorry. Come on. Should arrange some. We're arranging food for you tomorrow. And there's some sweets.
Oh, you wish?
It's like the other is the royal weed, you know. I mean, that's not punishing.
All the base.
The base soul. There's 4 people from the show. Ian's not coming. Ben's not coming, unfortunately. Well, somebody else is not coming. Oh, David Bond's not coming. No, he's the Stone's not coming. And David Dresner, he said he's coming for the show, but he's not coming.
Oh, wow.
Oh, well, good catch.
Who is? I mean, let's get hold of him. Oh, yeah, yes.
I'm taking all the strawberries.
Oh, so you tell him about the Sim? Yeah, it's getting close to 30. Oh, sure. Surfer said to me that a few people asked me to take bad dice. They all want this. Surfer said he doesn't want to take the Rachel. He doesn't want to go because he doesn't want to miss it. He doesn't want to miss the 10, 20 minutes. He'll be missing, go there and back.
Yeah.
But if you're finding it difficult, he's happy to do it.
Who?
Surfer said this.
He said, oh, so I asked Penny. And it was Penny actually, sorry.
Yeah, because he asked me.
I told him I'm happy to auction off. I said, at the moment, I have the rights.
How is she selling it for?
We'll do Penny.
Nice. Put it on eBay.
No, so I said, so Penny, maybe I can collect it.
Right.
Oh, you mean it's either both? It's going to be a
Why?
middle. So one way definitely. I'll just
Why? What's the cheshbon?
Why did you take it?
What?
It's not going to be there beginning of the end, like it's going to be middle.
Yeah.
So it's going to be, you're going to have to go out 10, 15 minutes to get around.
Yeah, no, that's the problem.
So yeah, so maybe I'll let Penny do at least one.
So you're arranging between you and him?
Yeah. I'm happy to do that.
20 to 8. Okay. Guys, what? Quarter to 20 to 9. Sorry, 20 to 9. I mean, I'm sorry, 12. Right. People should come in staggered and try and avoid policemen when they're coming in.
Have you got my space?
Yeah, I think we've got space.
Space for 2 meters apart for everyone?
Everybody 2 meters apart. 5 meters apart. And screens. There isn't 2 meters apart.
No, we should bring the screen.
Yes. We should bring oxygen masks as well. Right. Okay. Those are the sweets. I was very excited about Eiruvin. Okay. Okay, we're up to Daf Kuf Gimel on base. Good evening, Yehuda. Good work. We're up to Daf Kuf Gimel on base, the Mishnah. So now, Chas v'sholom, if a kohen gets a cut on his finger, kohen gets a cut on his finger. So what does he want to do? He wants to put a bandage on. So, right. That is a plaster. Plaster doesn't heal. There are 3 halachic problems, if you can think about it, not so easy. Let's see how many you can get to. Of a kohen putting a bandage on a finger which has been cut. Can anybody think of any on Shabbos? Before, very good. Before healing. Or the rest of them have nothing to do with Shabbos. They say chatzitza. What chatzitza?
No idea.
Oh, the avoida, you can't do chatzitza. We mentioned that terrible story of Yisachar ben Barkoi. That's right. Chatzitza, very good. So you got 2, which I thought you'd get. There's a 3rd one, which is harder to get. Chatzitza meful. There's a 3rd problem with putting a bandage on. No, not that one. The 3rd problem, interesting problem, is how many clothes does a kohen wear? 4 or 8, not more. So putting on a bandage is that. Oh, I just said potential problems. I should have said potential.
It's not going to be a minimum size.
Oh, but it could be a potential problem. I'm not saying it's definitely a problem. It depends how it bandages. So let's see the Mishnah. Kohen shaloko be'etzboi. He got a wound on his finger. Kochale Gemi Bamikdash is allowed to put a Gemi in the Beis Hamikdash because, as Vashi even though it's before, it's tzerich avoida. It's necessary because you can't do the avoida with his finger beating. Avaluba Medina, you're not allowed to put a bandage on which heals. So Shai straight away asked the question. I mentioned you're allowed to put on a plaster. The difference between a plaster and a bandage is that a plaster doesn't heal. It's just protection. Protection is permitted. This particular kind of reed, which we're going to describe, actually heals. And the four is awesome. Im loitzi dam, if it's to make the blood come out, can awesome. Because that is a deraisa, it's a form of shoichet, and it's not tzerich avoida anyway. So therefore, either way, it is awesome. The Mishnah tells us a chiddush that you're allowed to in the Beis Hamikdash put on a bandage for a four. Omar Rav Yehuda Beit Rav Chia, lo yishanu elo gemi, only a reed, avot tzultzul cotton, but a thin belt. Have a yitu begodim. It's wearing too many clothes, and therefore it's no good. Rav Yehuda Omar lo yomu yitu begodim, mokim begodim. Avot shleim mokim begodim, lo have a yitu begodim. It's only considered yitu begodim if it's by the clothes. That means you wear two shirts, very good. But to put on something which is not by the clothes, there's no issue of yitu begodim. You've got a third problem. Okay, not problem yet to be God. What about chatzitza? The word says besmol on his left hand. In Nami biyamin the shniba mokem avoid on the right hand, but not ways holding the avoid. So we've got three halachas of it. He's allowed to put on what about the four, which is the rabbanon. Tells us they tiru shvus b'migdash. They permitted a shvus b'migdash. What about yitu begodim? What about the fact that he's wearing too many clothes? What's the answer? Oh, it's less than the shir. It's less than the shir. Or it's not b'mokim begodim, depending which where you're going. So therefore, it's either less than the shir or it's not b'mokim begodim. Oh, what about chatzitza?
Is it a bandage or the plaster?
This is a bandage, like a thin bandage. What?
Say that plaster on your hand, you don't have to take it off.
It is.
Yes.
It is a chatzitza. It is a chatzitza. Yes. And what's the third? Wait a second. What's the third thing? It's on his left hand or on his right hand where it's not touching the avoid. So that's the evidence. The end of the whole shak for the Torah. Now the more tries to fit in all the different shifts. Upliga devava. Doma wava mamchisav mokim begodim ibaded clothes. Afilu nimo achas chutzetzes. Even one thread. The person has one thread between his clothes and his body. It's a chatzitza. Shaloi b'mokim begodim, not next to his clothes. Sholish al sholish chutzetzos. Pochas sholish and chutzetzos. If it's 3 by 3, it's a chatzitza. Not 3 by 3, it's not a chatzitza. Now, the word over here chatzitza, Rashi tells us. The word chatzitza is incorrect. It's not precise. Let's read the words again. Rava says, "B'mokim begodim, where you're wearing clothes. Let's say you've got a shirt, you put underneath the shirt. Even one thread is a chatzitza. Shaloi b'mokim begodim. If it's 3 by 3, it's a chatzitza. How can it be a chatzitza? It's not shaloi b'mokim begodim. You've got clothes in one place. No, that's not what the Gemara means. Rashi says the word chatzitza over here means yitu begodim. We are borrowing the word chatzitza when we mean the word yitu begodim. Because of the fact that you've got extra clothes, we call it chatzitza only because the Reisha talks about chatzitza. Okay. Oh, again. Oh, it says, well, Rabbi Yochanan vaday pliga. He definitely argues with Rabbi Yochanan. Because if you remember, Rabbi Yochanan said the whole problem of chatzitza is only b'mokim begodim. But shaloi b'mokim begodim, there's absolutely no problem whatsoever. So we see that Rabbi Yochanan holds that dafka should be mokim begodim. So Rava and Rabbi Yochanan argue. Let's say he's arguing with Rabbi Chia because he said tzultzul cotton, a thin belt, is awesome. And Rava said only if it's 3 by 3, and a thin belt can be less than 3 by 3. Shani tzultzul cotton de choshev. So either if it's 3 by 3, 3 fingers, how big is a finger? Which finger do you go? I've got 5 fingers. Which finger are we going for? No, which finger do we use and where about? My finger is not the same width everywhere. I'm afraid not. No, it's the thumb and the fattest part of the thumb. That is considered an etzba. The fattest part of the thumb. And you see the Stipler writes that he spent time measuring people's thumb at the fattest point, and he came to the conclusion it's between 2.4 and 2.5 centimeters. Right? So you can measure it yourself. It's interesting that you've got it. About an inch. How much is an inch? Right. Okay, it's about an inch. Good to take it back. So again, 3 fingers is considered chatzitza or yitur begodim. But if it is a special belt, which is less than 3 fingers, since it's a proper belt, that's considered chatzitza. Lishna achrina. Now we have exactly the same Gemara with slightly different nuschos, versions. Amar v'lo, Amar v'deved al chilei shana legemi. But tziltzul koton chaytzes, the small tziltzul is a chatzitza. Rabbi Yochanan, malem chatzitza pachos sholosh al sholosh mokim begodim. Av shlem mokim begodim. Sholosh al sholosh chaytzes. Stop up with Adam Dalef. And here we have a kulen Rabbi Yochanan. Before we said of mokim begodim, even one hair is a chatzitza. Now we're saying mokim begodim, it's only a chatzitza if it's 3 by 3. But over here we're saying no. It's a chabal. It gets disturbing sometimes when people get 2 things. What happens is I get distracted. I get to a thing. It's a chabal. Again, we're saying like this. If it's 3 by 3, this version is more makeup. Now, b'mokim begodim only if it is 1 hair is a chatzitza. Before we said b'mokim begodim even 1 thread is a chatzitza. Now we're saying b'mokim begodim only if it's 3 by 3. And then we say that there is this Rabbi Yochanan, this version of Rabbi Yochanan is a lot more lenient than the previous version. And also, Shliv is a kula. That only if it's 3 by 3. But how do you do Rabbi Rav Chisda? That's exactly like Rabbi Rav Chisda, that if it's between, and this is how we pass by the way, that b'mokim begodim, even if it's 1 hair, it's a chatzitza. For example, let's say a kohen works, and he's got a hair on his body. And then what happens is, a hair comes off his body. So now between the shirt and the body, he's got a loose hair. That could be a chatzitza. He has to make sure that he has to brush off his hair, that there should be no chatzitza. That's halacha, yes. Or for example, let's say he gets a drop of blood, and the drop of blood spills between his shirt and his body. That's also chatzitza. It has to be no chatzitza, that's what passes.
How does he control what happens during that?
So he has to make sure, watch himself, to make sure the blood squirts onto a place. But if it's... Okay, the shalom b'mokim begodim. I mean, for example, let's say the clothes reach here, then it's only a chatzitza, meaning over here again, the word chatzitza Rashi says again is a lashon mushal. It's a bold expression. We mean yitur begodim. So, for example, he wants to wear a watch. Can he wear a watch? No. Why not? I'm not sure. It's shalom b'mokim begodim. It's less than 3 by 3. I don't know. I mean, I can hear what you say. No, that's your gut reaction of your mind as well. But passions from the way we pass them. Would be okay. It's shleim b'mokim begodim. We can't call it a beged. No, because it's a beged chashuv. It's a beged chashuv. So it could be it's also like it's tziltzul cotton. So well, leiber pliged Rabbi Yehuda beid avchia. Oh, shall it tziltzul cotton the chashuv? Says well, Rabbi Yochanan according to Rabbi Yochanan that the Mishnah says that again shleim b'mokim begodim is mutter as long as it's not 3 by 3. What's the Mishnah talk about? Gemi. What's a gemi? It's a reed. Why does the Mishnah talk about a reed? The Mishnah should talk about something else. They should tell us something much greater than that. Why does the Mishnah only permit you to put a reed on a cart? Put a tziltzul cotton. Answers the Gemara. That if you want to know what heals, a gemi heals. It's a kind of grass, a reed, which if you put it on a wound, not only does it protect the wound, but it actually knits the skin back together again. So therefore, that's what the Mishnah is telling us. Be'emes is a kohen is allowed to put on a small belt as well. Why is it allowed to put on a small belt? Because it's less than 3 by 3. But the reason why the Mishnah talked about a reed is to tell you that you should know this is a kind of thing that heals, and that's why a normal person is not allowed to. New Mishnah, new topic. We've got lots of different topics today. You can imagine running up the ramp. It can be slippy on a rainy day, or snowy day. So you want to put salt or grit down. So you're allowed to, in order to help people not to slip. So you're allowed to use a big well. I mean, they used to have this massive, like loads of buckets tied to a very big wheel, and they would draw water like that. And even the Be'akar B'Yom Tov, they will describe all these wells and what's the chashash and why only the Beis Hamikdash and not other places. So first we're going to discuss putting down salt. What's the problem of putting down salt? What would you say?
You have to grind it.
Right. I would have chashash all of these, but that's not the chashash, the Gemara's main chashash. What's the main chashash? Boina, because you're building onto the thing, onto the ramp. You're building onto the ramp. What?
Yeah, it gets mushy.
No, so you're adding to the...
No, it gets...
How long do you want it there for?
If you don't pick up these, it gets...
Well, not stay there. If you add grit and salt to your hard salt... No, well, the thick, heavy salt will become part of the thing, and then people walk with it. The ramp will get high. It says, "Well, what will have ikra pashuna leRava?" Rav asked the kasha to Rava. Tanan says, "I'm Mishnah Beis Kimelech Kaveh Akeres Shleach Liku B'Mikdash Shemim Dinoloi." You're only allowed to add salt to the base of Mikdash, not other places. Umin. Chotzish Niskalkut B'Mik Shavim. Let's say you go out, got a kiddush, and there's loads of guests coming, not during COVID, obviously. And everybody tramples through your front garden, and what happens is the whole garden gets more and more muddy, and people can't walk through. So what you're allowed to do, maybe teven, you could take straw or meradapo and spread it out. So you see that we're not chayshish for boina. So what's the chiddush of our mission that we're allowing you to do salt? Hey, we're allowing you there to do straw. Why would? What's the difference in salt and straw? Why is straw meant for being moved?
People sleep on it and
Separate.
Yes. I mean, you never plan to leave it there. After you've put everybody's trampled on it for your kiddush, you'll take it and feed your cow with it. So it's not a permanent thing. Mashenkin, the salt in the base of Mikdash is a permanent thing. Says the Gemara, that's no answers. Shadi Tev, sure, you're not going to leave there, because you're not going to leave there because you don't want that it should, because it's useful. You're going to get it afterwards, feed your animals with it. If you're going to leave it there, you're not allowed to change the building of the base of Mikdash. You have to build the base of Mikdash exactly how Hashem said. So if you're going to add the salt, it's going to be a permanent bin. If you're not going to leave it there, it's a chatzitza. When the kohanim walk up the ramp, they're not walking on the ramp. And if it's a chatzitza, for example, the halacha is the kohanim have to stand on the floor. It's also chatzitza. If a kohen stands, for example, on somebody else's legs while he shechts on a bowl, it's possible. The avodah is possible. You have to stand on the floor. So it's a chatzitza. We're talking not about when it's actually sprinkling blood or putting it on the fire. He's just bringing their limbs onto the ramp. We'll learn about it in Mitzvah and Yoma. The whole halachas, there was a special procedure how you brought the limbs onto the ramps. Therefore, that was not part of the avodah. That the actual bringing the limbs to the ramp was also the avodah. Bringing wood was not part of the avodah. It was only tossing the wood onto the fire, but bringing the wood was not. So it comes out the Maisa. The 12 points out a very interesting thing. The halacha the Maisa, you're going to then wash the salt away, because otherwise you can do it for the kohanim bringing the wood, but not for the kohanim going to bring the limbs. So it means that you can't keep the salt there. It means you're going to have to wash it away. If you're going to have to wash it away, so it's like teven, which is that it's not permanent. So what's the difference? Why in the base of Mikdash is it permitted and everywhere else forbidden? It's always, if it's permanent, it's always forbidden. If it's temporary, that's what he says. A very strange answer. It comes out there's no halachic nafkemina between the base of Mikdash and everywhere else. In the base of Mikdash, when you put salt down, we know and you know that you're going to move it away shortly after. Since you're going to move it shortly after, so it's no issa because not doing anything. If you put salt down on your path, right? It's not like the thin salt. We're talking about heavy duty salt. I don't think the thin salt will help you. Right? That thick salt, rock salt. What happens? Then it's going to be part of your path, and you're never going to wash it away. So the Shillim point out that the Meister would put salt in his back all the time, and have to constantly wash it away in order that it shouldn't become part of his back. Dorash Rava passed to give it to Rasha. Chotz that got ruined in the rain, maybe Tevin Marada boy, you could take straw and spread it out. You can't take it out of a basket and spread it. What you do is you take a basket, you make a hole in the basket, and like you let it fall out of the basket. It's a derech shinui that it shouldn't look like ubda dechur. Rava got a moya. What's the word amoya over here mean? What? No, amoya doesn't mean fear over here. Amoya means like a loudspeaker, somebody that would announce things. So Rava set up an amoya, somebody to, what's the good word for it in English? Announcer. What? Town crier, but there's a better word for it. And now, what do they call it? A spokesman.
MC.
He stood up a spokesman to say, the Doash, he said as follows: what I said over to you, it's a mistake. Rava got up and he made an announcement. I made a mistake. What was the mistake that I made? That I told you that you're allowed to spread straw. You're not allowed to spread straw. Only b'derech shinui. It's a very interesting gemara, a chizuk, that when the Rav says something wrong, it's always a question, should he announce that he made a mistake and in that way make people think less of him or not? Rav over here could have told people quietly he made a mistake. Instead, Rav has set up an amoira. Amoira means somebody who speaks loud. A speaker. You got somebody as a speaker to announce that he made a mistake, and indeed that's the halacha. If you want to put out straw at a kiddush, you have to use a shiur that shouldn't look like uvda dechol. Okay. So the Gemara is going to explain there are two possible problems with drawing water through this water wheel. What are the two problems can you think of? I don't think any of you will guess either. Can any of you think of a reason? Two potential problems with filling water from water.
If it breaks, it comes to
None of the two. One is it makes a noise, making a noise on Shabbos. And the other is that you've got abundance of water, you'll come to water your field. What do you say? Very strange. Oh, we'll see. Ula went to visit Manasseh. Also, a man came and knocked on the door. You think, what did he do wrong? Knocked on the door. We all do that. Omar, man, hi. Who's this person? Lischel Gufre, let his body be destroyed. The Kamochele le Shabbato, because it's the Mechal Shabbos. Only singing. You sing that only singing. I'll find you cases where not singing. Any sound is forbidden. Malin b'diyufi. Diyufi is very interesting. I've done it for my children. Sometimes you get like in the winter holidays, children bored. You have to think of an activity. What you do is you take a straw and you take 2 cups. And one's full of water, one is empty. And you suck a little bit and you hold the straw. And you can even get it to pour more and more water. If you add more water to the full one, it keeps going across. Yeah, suction. So, Mamalin B'Duf, you're allowed to do that on Shabbos. It's not considered a malacha. Why? Because you're using air. There's nothing wrong. And you are halacha. Umetifin mi'arak l'chila b'Shabbos. This was a very complicated bowl, which had a lot of tiny holes. You'd fill it with water, cover it, and none of the water would drip out with the same principle. What's the principle? That when there's air suction, none of the water drops out. You then lift up the lid, and the water starts dripping out. And this would help a person who was not well. We'll explain in a minute how it helped people who are not well. Only for somebody who's not well. Is it not that the choila is fast asleep? Because you want to wake him up gently. So you see over here that only for choila it's mutter, but for everybody else it's forbidden. Shema mino the choila also is a vaya that making any sounds at all is forbidden. It says, well, no, the choila is awake. The koi boy delinim, he wants to fall asleep. The mishtamaki choila zumzume, it sounds like a murmur. It sounds like a muttering sound. And when the water drips out, it soothes him. So it's a musical sound as the water drips onto another piece of metal, and it drips bit by bit, it soothes him to sleep. So you've got no way again. We have a machlokas ula and rabba. What's machlokas ula and rabba? Rabba held only a sound of music is forbidden. Ula forbade all sounds. And therefore, if somebody knocks on the door according to ula is no good. Says, well, let's bring a raya from the fact that it's only mutter for a chayla, and that's a normal sound. It's not a musical sound. So, well, no, it's a musical sound to help him fall asleep. Why? How can you? You should know the mechaber brings that halacha. You're allowed to knock on the door on Shabbos. But the old mechaber adds, not with a knocker.
No, you
Can't use a knocker. Can you imagine?
Designated.
Now, the Shavur says they're allowed to make all sounds which are not musical. And what about whistling? Mutter also. The Shavur says it's mutter.
Yeah, it's mutter. How can it be?
Why? It's not musical? When you whistle, it's musical? No, you're not allowed to make musical sounds with your mouth. Singing is
not
mutter.
also for other reasons.
But nowadays, you've got, let me just finish off. The Chazon Ish wrote about this. It's not actually Chazon Ish. It's in Maaseh Ish. Maaseh Ish is a Talmud of the Chazon Ish, writing from the Chazon Ish. It's not the same as the Chazon Ish. Not quite as reliable. That one should never whistle, even on a weekday. It's a certain azus. It's a certain
What about the
brazeness.
ones people make with the wine in the stem glasses?
No, so that would be a question. That probably also. What did you want to say, Ben? I didn't hear.
I was going to say, is whistling not some sort of Kabbalistic thing?
Oh, Ben said he thinks that Kabbalah you shouldn't whistle. The Chazon Ish writes, you should. But the Mishavur says, some people when they whistle, they put their fingers in the mouth. Even that is mutter, because it's not music, it's just sound. But you shouldn't use a knocker And Mishnah talks about a situation where a person can't get in unless he uses a knocker, and the Mishnah tries to he finds that all those who are making. What?
It's like a massive house.
It's a massive house and nobody can hear. The Shmuel says the Shas Tchaki Plimi. So the Maisa, but we're still actually what we just said is the Maskodas Sugya. At this stage of the Gemara is a Machlokes. According to Uli, not allowed to make a sound. According to Rav, only musical sound, and we're trying to prove one way or another. Esvi. So if a person can't afford a scarecrow, so he wants to be in the field and spend Shabbos afternoon making sure that no birds come to attack his fruit. So with the law of his pumpkins from the animals, the Shabbat Kedarka, the Shabbos Uvachli is sapik, is not allowed to bang against his knee. Sapik Viso is not allowed to clap, not allowed to slap his knee. Is not allowed to dance. So you're not allowed to do these movements to stop the birds coming. My time. What's the problem of banging? It's because of the sound. You might take a rock and throw it at the bird and then be over on it so therefore we forbade him to do these actions to remind him that it's Shabbos, because if he's finding that all Shabbos afternoon, he might forget it's Shabbos and his enthusiasm to save his field. So therefore what we have to do is we forbid him certain things just to encourage him to remember it's Shabbos that he shouldn't do it. Says the Gemara. You're not allowed to play with nuts on Shabbos. My time allowed to come with it color is not because you're making a sound. Like look, the most is when you roll the nuts, if the floor is not straight, the nuts will not roll properly. So therefore, it's nothing to do with making a sound. It's to do with the fact that you're straight in the ground. You're not allowed to play with apples either. With rolling apples, like old people like to play bowls, right? So you can't do with apples on Shabbos. And in fact, you're not allowed to play bowls on Shabbos for the same reason. Because if you play bowling, I'm talking about the old bowling where you roll. That's right. It's also why you're not allowed to do it? Because you might come to flatten it.
So you can't play marbles as well?
Yes. So now we come to our Mishnah. Only the base of Mikdash allowed, and not the base of the rest of the country. My time, is not because making a sound and it's forbidden. Look, so you might come to fill up so much water. You'll think to yourself, I've got so much water, I might as well water my field. I made all that effort. He allowed it in mechuzah to fill up with water with a water wheel. There's no gardens, there's no chubas around, people are not going to do it. He saw top of Kovdad of this, the Kotoru Kitna, that people use the excess water to soak their flax, which is a form of losh, or melaban, it's machlokes Rishonim which it is. Osa lehu if abated. So the ma'aseh the halacha is you're not allowed to draw water more. You're not allowed to use a water wheel on Shabbos. You're allowed to draw a bit of water. And the ma'aseh we pass, as we said, that you're allowed to make a sound, but you're not allowed to make a musical sound. And therefore, when you go to somebody's house, you are allowed to knock on the door, but as the Chavah says, not a knocker because of the Chol. Now this be'emes, the rest of the Mishnah was like this. There was a certain one which they used a water wheel. Even though it wasn't in the Beis HaMikdash, they used it for the people coming to the Beis HaMikdash to drink. Now, normally you're not allowed to use a water wheel, but there was one well, which what happened was they permitted it originally, the original Doros, and therefore later Doros, they said if this well was permitted by our fathers, it's always going to be permitted, and they permitted it forever, even though it wasn't actually in the Beis HaMikdash. Now the question is, why was it called Be'akol? There are two explanations for the word cow. My be'akah, that they read about it, different words. We'll see later what words they read. They permitted it. Not all wells are cows, they permitted that. Only this one. That the word cow comes from the word kriya, to read. This was there was only one which they read about. They only spoke about one. So what's been all the cows? There's mashma, there were many others. There was only one well that they ever discussed. It was a well which drew cold water, fresh water. The pasuk says that just like a well draws fresh water, unfortunately do have virus. Like sometimes you have a well which is constantly sprouting forth fresh water. Unfortunately, we're constantly sprouting new virus. That's the Yomi. So hokir can mean producing liquid. So this is the Be'akad. Doesn't mean that one which they read about in Meloshin Kriya. It means Meloshin Heike to bring forth. So now what's Kufa? Look at Abos HaKoyes Etir Zubelvat. Uksholu B'dei Agil Chonu Aleo. V'nevim Shebenem Etiulen. V'nevim Shebenem Negasim B'yodei. Meaning like this. That there was, when they came from the second Beis Hamikdash, they came across a well which they used to draw with a water wheel, and they permitted it, not because of the Nevi'im, but rather because they said our previous generation's fathers permitted it, and if they permitted it, we can permit it, simply because the people needed it to be able to drink in order to be able to get to the Beis Hamikdash. So therefore, even though all wells we forbade, this well they permitted.
Surely it's pragmatic.
No, I mean, they established. There was obviously other ways to get what you can knock on people's door in Yerushalayim, but they established that this they're going to allow for the sake of it. New mission, a new topic. Sheretz Shnusa b'Mikdash. There are 8 shrotzim, which if they die, they produce tumah. It's av hatumah. Now you've got a problem. What should you do? A kohen takes it out with his belt. You can't carry it out, because if you carry it out, the kohen makes himself tummy, and the tummy person is not allowed to be tzvei. So the kohen uses a belt to take it out. The advantage is that clothes that become tummy from a sheretz become a rishon l'tumah, and the rishon l'tumah can't make a human being tummy at all. So therefore, a kohen will not become tummy at all. His belt will become tummy, but he will not become tummy. He just needs to tovel his belt. It's okay, but it's not likely to have food inside of Beis Hamikdash. The problem with this solution is that he's made his belt tummy, and the halacha is you're supposed to memay tumah. But he has very little choice. What other choice does he have? Because if he can't carry it himself, because he will become tummy, which is even worse. Rabbi Yehuda, he uses a wooden tongs. A flat piece of wood, pshutei kli'et, is not mekabel tumah. This table is mekabel tumah because it's a keli. But Marshall, if you've got a flat piece of wood which hasn't yet done anything done with it, it's not mekabel tumah. So you can take such a piece of wood. What? Chopsticks. Oh, very good. Chopsticks, not mekabel tumah. I'm wondering if they considered keli. I don't think they are. You can use them to eat. Okay, people who can't use it, I don't know. Okay, so use chopsticks to take out the sheretz, and that way, what have you gained? You've gained that nothing became tummy. What have you lost? You've lost that it takes time to find it. A belt every kohen will have. These pieces of wood will take time. Yeah, but you want to take the sheretz as quickly out. Table the belt you do later. You want to get the sheretz out of this leadership. What? It takes you 2 seconds, but shaking to find a piece of wood can take a long time. No, so it doesn't need to do that avodah. Take off his belt, it doesn't need to do that avodah anymore. Another machlok is the heichal is the place where the shulchan that the menorah was. That was like an ant chamber, which was before, like a doorway. So between the olam and mizbeach. That means only those places which were so stringent, because even the kohen was not allowed to go there unless he had an important reason. That's the places you took it out on Shabbos. But everywhere else, you waited till after Shabbos, because a sheretz is muktzah. Since a sheretz is muktzah, so sheretz, why is it muktzah? Which muktzah is it? Muktzah machmas kufoy, because it's useless. You can't use it. So therefore, it's muktzah. Since it's muktzah, so if you waited after Shabbos, it's in Beis Hamikdash. So he said only 3 places. That is the Kodesh, obviously the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Kodesh, the Ulam, that's the room before, and between them is Be'ach Beis Hamikdash. Anyway, the only place they're actually arguing about is the rest of the Azor. I mean, if you have the Mizbeach, the rest of the Azor is also to go in, but once you go past the Azor, they were called Lishkos. Lishkos were like chambers of rooms. Everybody agrees that if you found the sheretz there, you waited till after Shabbos. The rest of the places, either according to Rabbi Akiva or according to Bananas, you'd cover it with a big iron bowl.
If you find the name of Lishkos, doesn't make what's inside the Lishkos.
No, only a dead person, not a dead sheretz. If it touches the wood, so make it a rishon l'tumah, or not wood, a keli, it would make it a rishon l'tumah, but not the person.
The wood for the Mizbeach is a keli, sure.
Yeah, no, the wood for the Mizbeach would not a keli. Let's say it touched something else, it would make that thing tummy. Let's say it touched the keteros or something, it would make it a rishon l'tumah. Yes. That which they permitted it, they only gave it yours, not a new heter. And they only permitted to Rabbanons and not Deraisas. These two enigmatic statements, one will be explained today, Mr. Shem, and one Yehuda Mr. Shem will explain tomorrow at the Hadron. So we'll come to the Gemara, we'll explain. He made two enigmatic statements. One is that you only matter that which is yours, not which was given to others. We'll explain later what that means. And only matter a Shvus, not a Deraisa, the Gemara will explain later. Says the Gemara like this. Omar Rav Tovi bar Kisna Omar Shmuel, ha-machnis t'mei sheretz l'mikdosh. If you're machnis, a t'mei sheretz t'mei mikdosh, meaning, let's say you got a dead sheretz, and it touched a cup, and you take the cup into t'mei mikdosh, chayav, you chayav kos. Sheretz atzmoi, but if you take a sheretz itself, potter. Now that's very illogical, because the sheretz is an avatuma, and the cup is only a rishon tumah. Nevertheless, he says, that a sheretz, you're not chayav for taking in, but the cup itself, you're chayav. My tama. Omar, the pasuk says, "V'zocha and nekeva t'shalechu." The pasuk says when he talks about shiluach and amachnos, which is in which parasha? Parashas Nosei. That it says from male to female. Mishesh to tara b'mikveh yotza shel shin tara b'mikveh. The pasuk talks about sending out men and women. Men and women can become torn. As dead shells will never become torn. So therefore, since the pasuk emphasizes sheretz, since the Torah emphasizes human beings, the Torah is trying to tell you only something that can become Torah, there's a chiyuv to take it out. But a sheretz itself, which there's no chiyuv to take it out, which can never become Torah, you can leave it in the Beis Hamikdash. But a keli, which can become Torah, so therefore, since the Rishon Tumah, it becomes Torah. So therefore, it comes out an interesting thing that as keli, which becomes Torah for Tamei sheretz, you have to take that Beis Hamikdash straight away. But the sheretz itself, you can leave it inside. Let's prove it. The Rabbi makes a different deal. So one pasuk he wants Medaik to accept sheretz, which can never come to, and he says practically cheres. So the Chayur says the Gemara, it's the same logic. No, my tav should less later b'mikvah. It won't become to in the mikvah. Zocha the cave can become to in the mikvah. Ekliches can't become to in the mikvah. So therefore, the Gemara understands that it is the same thing as the same logic. Just like a sheretz can become to in the mikvah, also kliches can come to in the mikvah, and it's the same drasha. Says well, no. Says well, no. Really, a sheretz you have to take out. Why? Because it can come out of avatuma. The Torah was coming to exclude something that cannot become an avatuma. A klicheres will never become an avatuma. Now there are two ways that a keli can become an avatuma. Rashi's got a whole avichus over here. How can something ever become an avatuma? If it touches a dead body is one, or if it's in the same room as a dead body, that's one. But how through itself? Oh, the Zav sits on it. Very good. No, only if the Zav sits on it. If the Zav sits on it, Tamei medras becomes avatuma. There's only two ways for a keli to become Tamei avatuma. One is if it goes into the house or touches a dead body, or if a Zav sits on it. Now, why can a klicheres not become either of these two? Oh, Tesis says because it has to go in the airspace. That's Tesis. But the Gemara Maisa Psachim says not like that. It's interesting that Tesis to get it clear. Be'emes it's a drasha. There are two separate drashas. One is there's a drasha that says that only something that can become toy in the mikveh that becomes tamei by a dead person. And since the klicheres will never become toy in the mikveh, it does not become tamei. And that is why in the olden days people loved to use a klicheres, because if you left, it's practical. It would not become tamei if you left in a dead person's house. So if you were, they used to use a lot of klicheres. So it was very practical. It wouldn't become tamei in a dead person's house because it doesn't come to a mikveh. Now, why can it not become tummy through a zav sitting on it? And very strangely, Rashi says because if a zav would sit in the klicheres, it would crack because klicheres is not that strong. Earthenware is not so strong, and it has to be something that can support a zav. And they all ask him Rashi. Rashi says it over here, and Rashi says that the problem the Gemara is again that the Gemara in Psachim asks the question why it can't become, and Rashi and the Gemara there says. The Gemara there says because it has to become something that can come to in a mikveh, and the klicheres can't come to in a mikveh. So again, it's interesting that the Rishonim over here give reasons when really the Gemara Pesachim actually gives drashas. Look at Rashi. Rashi says it's a long Rashi, but fine. The medrash lichozim b'shum nishba is going to get broken. Okay. Nice. The point is that kli cheres can become tummy. So nice. Let's take this. The Torah says zochor nekeva, male and female, you have to send out, and we darshan only zochor nekeva. So there are two separate drashas. One drasha is only said that can become Torah mikveh, and therefore sheretz, which is not Torah mikveh, you don't have to send out. And according to that, as sheretz, you'd be allowed to bring into the Beis Hamikdash. Alternatively, with darshan zochor nekeva, only something that can become another tumah. Something that can't become another tumah is not mechur to be sent out. So kli cheres you can bring in. What's enough commitment between these two drashas? A sheretz. If you dash in the first drash, you're allowed to bring in the sheretz. If you dash in the second drash, you're not allowed to bring the sheretz because the sheretz can become another tumah. So we've got machlokas how to dash in zochor and nekeva, and depending how you dash it is whether sheretz can be brought into Beis Hamikdash. Rashi takes great pains in case Chas v'Shalom person thinks that if you take a vision the tumah to Beis Hamikdash, you've done nothing wrong. Says Rashi, of course you've done something wrong. Oh, the Gemara darshaned only klicheres is part because it can't become another tumah. It can only become a vision the tumah. Says Rashi, because a klicheres can never become another tumah. That is why we allow you to be to Beis Hamikdash. But a metal keni that can become another tumah. Even if now it's only a vision the tumah, it's also also big to Beis Hamikdash if you do your chav. That's right. That's what it started off with. The Gemara said it, and Rashi is saying that opinion is according to everybody, not makes the difference on the Tosha. Says the Gemara this. Lema ketanoi. Let's explain that this question as to whether you're allowed to bring a sheretz Beis Hamikdash or not is a machlokes in our Mishnah. Sheretz in the Mikdash could be bem yonya with a belt. Shelish satum div avich break of yodoim betzva sheleitz with a wooden tongue. Motzio shelavis satum. My labo kabifiki demand ma shelish is the one who says you shouldn't delay because some machlokes sheretz Mikdash chayv. Since if you bring a sheretz Beis Hamikdash you have chatos, of course. If you do a mistake, it's a chatos, you don't on purpose have course. So therefore, since we're so desperate for you to get it out, we don't care about making the klinik, Tommy. Umando Ashlele Rabbi, because of our machne sheretz Mikdash party, he holds it's only potter. Look, the kula mechayev, everybody agrees to chayev. V'achamokam bifigi masav ashuy to me'odif, or masav afushit to me'odif. Machlekes is whether should you delay, what's worse, delaying the tumah or increasing tumah, and if you can't compare to that. So says Tosfos, it comes out, this is the bottom Tosfos of a very difficult problem. Everybody agrees that you have to get it out. And because of that, we're either going to increase tumah or we're going to delay. Now, according to Shmuel, before we had the statements of Shmuel, you're even allowed to lechatchila take a sheretz into Beis Hamikdash. So neither of these Tanoim agree with him. So it's Tosfos that Shmuel had a different understanding. He held the machlokas in our Mishnah is his machlokas, and he passed like the man Omar that you have to get it out as quickly as possible because that you're allowed to delay because he held that there's no issur being in the show. So Shmuel himself, from Ma'aseh, doesn't agree with this Tosfos of the Gemara, right? That's the first few lines of Tosfos. What? Yeah, but if it would be only morally incorrect, you're being over an issur of muktzah on Shabbos. Why don't you wait till after Shabbos? Plus, you're doing your tumah, you're getting your clothes tummy. I missed out one that which we shouldn't point out, is that sheretz is not metame b'maso. If a sheretz is metame b'maso, you'd have another problem. Is that the kohen would be asked to carry it because it's metame. It's not metame b'maso. If you don't touch it, you just carry it. Okay. Says the Gemara. Let's say Elokani Tanoi. It's like the next set of Tanoim. That's not Mechmut Tanoi Chulu. We have Machlikas where you take it out. By La Bokavifki. Demand on Mazoro. One who takes it out of Azor because some Machlishes with the Sparta. Sorry, demand on Mazor Loy because some Machlishes with the Sparta. He always allowed to bring it in, and therefore you don't have to take it out of the Azor. Or Mandam Kula Azor. The one who says you have to take it out from the whole Azor because of Achayev. Maybe the second Machlikas in our Mishnah, which is regarding where you take it out from, is the Machlikas of Shmuel. Do we hold of Shmuel they allowed to take it in and out? No, that's not the case. Now here it's a bit difficult. Usually the Gemara says loy. The fact the Gemara does not say the word loy makes Tosfos explain that this Rabbi Yechon is a whole new topic. But Rashi doesn't say that. Rashi says not like that. Rashi says no. Rabbi Yechon is changing the previous machlokas. I will stick to Rashi. Everybody agrees you have to take it out of the Beis Hamikdash. They're arguing about Pshat in the Pasuk. It says the Pasuk, it's referring to the time where unfortunately there was Yoshio, HaMelech, they wanted to get rid of all the Avodah Zarah, and Avodah Zarah is Metame. Chazal said it's only Tumah D'Rabbanan. Everything that belongs to Avodah Zarah is a Tumah D'Rabbanan. So they had to go to Beis Hamikdash to take out the Avodah Zarah. So when they took out the Avodah Zarah, the Kohanim themselves became Tomei. So why did the Kohanim themselves go into the Beis Hamikdash to take it out? Because Levim are not allowed in, so they had no choice. So they took that to the Chotzer. And the Levim then took it once it was in the Azor. The fact that the Kohanim stopped and they gave it to the Levim. Why did they stop by the Azor? The Torah says they didn't care to leave it in the Azor. Is a right, to my opinion, that you're allowed to leave Tumah in the Azor, and that's why the Kohanim didn't bother taking it further. They left the Levim to do it. The Kohanim really, you have to take it out completely. Why did the Kohanim transfer the obligation to the Levim? Because Kohanim didn't want to be Tomei for longer. There's a big problem with this Gemara, is that Kohanim are not allowed to be Tomei. Or Kohanim not allowed to become at all Tomei? We've got a lot of Kohanim here.
Yes, sometimes they can.
Sometimes they can. Which Tumah are they allowed to?
The relative.
But there's much more than that, not just for the parents. Much more than Meis Mitzvah. They're only forbidden from Tumas Meis. All other Tumas they're allowed to. For example, let's say, somebody has Shechva Zera or Zov. A Kohen is allowed to touch a Zov. You'd have to tevel before you go to the Beis Hamikdash and do the Avodah. But there's no Issa.
What's the difference if they hold it for 5 minutes or 10 minutes?
Yes, that's another kasha. What's the Issa? And in fact, we shouldn't get very disturbed because it's a famous Kol Tumah Sha'nozi Megaleach Olav Kohen Osubo. Anything which a Nozi would have to shave his head, start off again, a Kohen is Osub. So there's a famous story that talks about that there was somebody showing him that held that Kohen were not allowed to become Tomei at all. So he says, of course, that's not true. How can you make such a mistake? Kohen were allowed to become Tomei. The only Tumah they're not allowed to is Tumas Meis. They should explain that since the Kohanim want to be dovuk to the Avodah as much as possible, they wanted to limit the amount of time they were Tomei in order to be able to travel quickly and get back to the Avodah. So it's not the normal Issa Tumah of Kohanim, which we have at the beginning of Parshas Emor, that Kohanim are not allowed to become Tomei. This is a whole different Tumah, Issa Tumah. That since a Kohen has to be ready to do the Avodah all the time, they want to be least Tumah possible because they could. No, it's not the Gabi Tumah. Not by Tumah Du'abon. Tonu Abon. Now, since we mentioned the Kohen Beis Hamikdash, the Kohen Nichnas Beichel Livdois Le'Sakid, everybody's allowed to go into Beis Hamikdash to fix. Or Loitzis Atumah. Or Mitzvah B'Koyanim, better Koyanim. That means even the Yisrael is allowed to go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. If part of the Kodesh HaKadoshim has a crack, let's say, and you're a builder, you're allowed to go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim to fix. No, to fix you're allowed to. Im Einshum Koyanim Nichnas Levim, Einshum Levim Nichnas Yisraelim. V'edi Tahim and Tamein Loi, but only Tahim, not Tamei. Says the Rosh, that even though the Vice says Tameim and Tahim, it's only Tahim, not Tamein. But if there's nobody Tahim, and there's a crack in the Beis Hamikdash, we even allow a Tomei person to go in. Can you imagine? Oh, that's a very good question. Omar Wunda, Rav Kahana Messiah Kahani. Rav Kahana supported the Kahani. Now the Avishin that say the reason Rav Kahana was Messiah Kahani, because he himself was a Kohen, that's why it was called Rav Kahana. The Avishin say there's not a Kohen, and it comes up in Machlekas in Baba Bassa. When we get to it, man, whether Rav Kahana was actually a Kohen or not. Yeah, put it on your fridge. Was he? Oh yeah, on the freezer. Was he a Kohen? So I saw something say that even if he wasn't a Kohen, he had a Netiyah to Mechazer Kohanim because his name was Kahana. You know, it's the Santa Zach.
You get some people called Kohen.
What? Yeah, that's it. Get Kohen if people called Kohen or not Kohanim. Family Kohen in Manchester, not Kohanim, the Levim.
Not all Kohen.
Yeah. Any Kohen.
Yeah, they're all not.
The Tony of Kahana b'Turch shedevach lafoiches leYavoy yochelu kanibali mum nichnosim b'nolim amizbeach lasis kuei pachim. The Torah says that Baal Mum is not allowed to go to Beis Hamikdash. You might have thought if a Baal Mum was not allowed to go to Beis Hamikdash, he's not even allowed to go in to fix things and to cover the platings. Talmud loima ach. Ach is always a miut. Ach but chilik. Mitzvah v'tzvimim. Ein shom tzvimim nichnosim b'alei mumin. Even a Baal Mum is allowed to go and fix the Beis Hamikdash. Mitzvah v'tzvimim. Ein shom tzvimim nichnosim tzvimim. Idi ve'idi Kohanim en Yisraelim loy. Iboy lahu. Now he held only Kohanim, not Yisraelim. Iboy lahu Tomei or Baal Mum. Eizemen nichnas. One Kohen is Tomei, one Kohen is Baal Mum. Which one goes in? Avchir ba'ashim arav. Tomei nichnas. To ishtoi ba'avodas tzibur. If everybody's Kohen, as Mashiach comes and we haven't managed to get to the mikvah, then we use Kohanim. So you see Tameim. So we see Tameim is sometimes permitted. A Baal Mum nichnas to ishtoi b'echles kodshim. A Baal Mum is allowed to eat kodshim. But a Tomei person is not allowed to eat kodshim. So got machlokas, what is better? Baskas Baal Mum is better. But nice Meshachim will tell us if Chas V'Shalom there's a crack in the Beis Hamikdash and you've only got either a Kohen who's Tomei or a Kohen who is a Baal Mum. Who should you take in? Machlokas Amoy. Now, last bits. Reb Shimon says that we don't permit you to be over an issa. We're only giving you that which is yours. What does it mean we're only giving you that which is yours? And then he carries on, we're only permitting you to Rabbanon. But the first statement, we're only giving you that which is yours. What does it mean only that which is yours? Person by mistake walked out of the tchum 1 amma, you can't come back in. You walked out of the tchum 1 amma, that's it. You stand there the whole Shabbos. Now the people who make mistakes, they'll be extra machmid, they'd want to be as careful as possible. And therefore everybody would be machmid. So therefore when they say 2,000 amas, there's actually another 15 amas. So therefore if you step out 1 amma, you're okay up to 15. The comment on the Kamala Ikonis, you're allowed to come in. So Shimon says like this. Now we understand the words of Shimon in the Mishnah very clearly. What does Shimon say in our Mishnah? Don't come in. Sorry, Shimon says in the Mishnah, we're only giving you that which is already yours. We're not permitting you to be over an Issa. We're only permitting you that which is already yours. What does it mean we're only permitting you that which is already yours? What does that mean? Meaning I'm not giving you an extra 15 amas of what Chazal said. I'm giving you the 15 amas which is already yours. Why is it already yours? Because when they originally measured it, they would always shorten it. Everybody would be extra machmid, they'd get nervous, they'd get nervous. So therefore, I'm giving you the extra 15 amas, which is already yours. Now, does anybody remember why exactly 15 amas?
Yeah, with the ropes.
Because they're holding each one is an am on either side.
No, I'm not a tefach on each side. And how many ropes would there be? Each rope, what was the length of the rope? 50 amas. It's one of the Dilshah questions. That's like 4 measurements. And then that's for hair. How long was the ropes? How far were cads, etc. The rope's 50 amas. 50 times 40 is how many times? Each person holds on both sides is 50 times 40 is 80 tefachim.
Which is 15 amas, is it?
80 tefachim.
Divide that by 6.
There's 6. Let's get it.
What's 80 divided by 6?
Oh, wait a second. 80. No, it's what did Rashi say?
4 fingers, that's right.
It was 4. What's the tefach? It was 4 fingers. It says
60 fingers divided by 6 is 50.
no. Sorry, it's not true. It's 4 finger, 4.5 fingers. Because when you hold it on, you have 4 fingers grasping it, plus a little bit extra because your thumb gets in the way. So 4.5 fingers. 4.5 fingers is 9 fingers per rope times 40. Times 50. Wait a second. How many times? Times 40 is 360. Yeah, it's 9 fingers per rope. Each rope was 50 hours. So times 40 is 360 fingers. 360 fingers. Divide each finger by 4. It's 90 tefachim. 90 tefachim is 15 hours. So what are the Shoni Master Kasha? That we just said before, if you're interested, that a tefach is this. But we said that the thumb, I think there are 4 thumbs give you more than your 4 fingers. The answer is when you put your fingers, you don't put them so tight. Very good. Mr. Shem, Basel, we don't call it Master yet. Mr. Shem, all invited. We look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. And everybody should come, okay, as much as possible to come with
We're going to test our eyesight will be the official excuse.
What time? 8 o'clock now?
No, quarter to 8. It's quarter to 8. I want to start prompt, Yehuda, yes? Yehuda? We started quite promptish. Yeah, promptish. Basic Soul are very good about these things. They know how to make a good, not schlepper right. You go sometimes to the schools and they make an evening and you know you're stuck there for days. Oh, between the drushes, that's right. Oh, very good. Oh.
What whiskey is it?
I'll tell you, why don't you bring it tomorrow night?